Listener-supported St. Gabriel Catholic Radio AM 820 brings you Family Sanctuary, a show that inspires living the gospel message in word and deed within our families. And now, Family Sanctuary with host Peggy Hartshorn.
Welcome to our program, Family Sanctuary, focusing on life-giving relationships and the family. I'm your host, Peggy Hartshorn, chairman of Heartbeat International, that advances life-affirming pregnancy help around the world. And we have a very interesting program for you today. Have you ever wanted to know more about adoption, particularly older child adoption? Because we hear so much about that, the need, so many children in foster care and so many children in need of a home. And we know there are so many families wanting to adopt. So why don't these people get together? What is the problem? And I have a guest today for you that you've heard before on St. Gabriel Radio, I hope, and that is Colleen Holton. Welcome, Colleen.
Thank you. I'm glad to be back.
Colleen has a real heart for adoption, and particularly for older child adoption. And the Lord has given her quite a lot of experience in this. As a young married woman, Colleen and her husband Sam are members of St. Paul's in Westerville. And you've been married for 8 years, is that correct?
Yep, going on 8 years this year.
And have 2 children, 6 and 4. And Colleen is really the driving force behind a ministry at St. Paul's in Westerville called Elizabeth Ministries. And I really, really love Elizabeth Ministry. We have another program, too, in our archives about it. But just give us a little summation, Colleen, of what Elizabeth Ministry does, because it really has a focus on adoption, which is very unusual.
It is. And Elizabeth Ministry, we're an international organization that seeks to provide hope, support, and healing for women really in all stages of motherhood. This organization was founded based on the scriptural story in the Gospel of Luke when Mary visits Elizabeth. And we celebrate new life, we mourn when a life is lost, and through it all, we provide practical support for the family. But what's special about our group at St. Paul is that we have many women who are a part of our ministry who have grown their family through adoption, whether it's domestic adoption, foster to adopt, international adoption. So it's become a unique focus for us that's a little different than other Elizabeth Ministry groups that you might know of.
Right. That really is amazing. I'm familiar with Elizabeth Ministry. I really think it's a wonderful ministry in a parish. And your Elizabeth Ministry is open to people who are not just from St. Paul's.
Yes,
is that correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Our core members are all go to St. Paul, but we offer support for really anyone throughout the diocese who needs it, from other parishes, and even people who aren't Catholic. We welcome anyone who would like to know more about Elizabeth Ministry to really get involved with us as well.
Sure. And if anybody is listening who may not even be in the Diocese of Columbus but would like to know more about Elizabeth Ministry, they could call St. Paul's office, 614-882-2109, and just ask for Elizabeth Ministry, and they would eventually get you, right?
Yes, they would, yes. And you can also go to the Elizabeth Ministry International website, and if you click on the chapters link, then you can find
where there
other
are chapters.
Yes, if there's one closer to you at a different parish.
Is that elizabethministries.org?
Yes,
okay,
it is.
elizabethministries.org. It really is a wonderful, wonderful ministry because you mentioned some of the things that Elizabeth Ministry helps with, and that support is one-on-one, like Mary to Elizabeth, right?
Yes, it's
and
the
Elizabeth
visitation model. Yeah. So we have women in our group who have been through similar experiences to women who ask for our support, and so we can match them up. You can do home visits, or if you just want to meet for coffee or email, phone conversations, whatever it is, you have someone who has been through what you're going through. And
sure. And that could
really
be
unique.
Infertility.
Yes.
Adoption, miscarriage, issues with childbearing, childbirth, young families, anything related to motherhood,
Yes.
as you said, which is
Yeah.
just wonderful. It's so needed. Well, thank you for that ministry, Colleen. And I just am amazed at how much support and information and even services. I think you've even had panel discussions about adoption. It's so needed today. It really is.
It is. And, adoption is one of those things that it was really popular, a decade ago, and then it's kind of gone by the wayside as more single mothers have decided to parent their child. And so it's really gone to like the back burner, and yet there's such a big need still, both domestically and internationally, for adoptive families. So that's one of the things that, with all the women in our group who have been through adoption, that we try to promote and really get out there, is that there's still a need.
And yet there are a lot of obstacles too.
Yes.
So we're going to talk about that in the rest of our program. Could you tell us really how your heart grew for adoption, and particularly older child adoption?
Sure. So my heart for international adoption specifically began when my family adopted my younger sister from an orphanage in Guatemala when I was 15 years old. I was one of 4 kids in my family at the time. I had 3 brothers, and my parents will tell you, since I was in 2nd grade, I would write in my journal at school, I want a sister. I need a sister. I'm tired of these 3 brothers. They're getting on my nerves. And so my teacher would contact my parents and say, do you know what Colleen's writing in her journal? She really wants a sister. And so finally, my parents, we looked into the adoption process and decided that international adoption was the right fit for our family. And so my sister was able to come home when she was 3.5, and I was 15 years old. And
wow.
So since
you
then,
were kind of a second mother.
Yeah,
I bet.
I was. Absolutely. Yes. So since then, I've kind of been on a mission to educate anyone I meet about life in third world countries, what it's like growing up in orphanages or foster homes, and just encouraging families to consider adoption, especially for older orphan children. And at 3.5, my sister was considered an older child. She was considered special needs because of her age. And that was back in the time when you could adopt internationally a child under the age of 1. There were some children coming home from China at 6 months old. And so 3.5 was really, this stigma of an older child. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And now, if you adopt internationally, it's very, very hard to adopt a child who is younger than a toddler, just because of all the obstacles, the red tape, the bureaucracy involved. But also, countries are really trying to find a place for children within their own country first. And so if it doesn't work out, by that time, the child is considered older. And a lot of parents are kind of overlooking that as well and discouraged by that. But, I want to say that an older child, they are so much less likely to find a forever family the older they get. And especially like the United States, they cap the international adoption age at 16, not 18. So once a child reaches 16, they cannot come into this country as an adopted
child.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So then there's kind of a waiting period in their own country between age 16 and 18 where it's, they're in limbo. They can't be adopted internationally. Mm-hmm. They're not an adult in their own child or in their own country usually. Mm-hmm. So that's just, I really have a passion now for older children and finding families.
Tell us about you. You mentioned just a minute ago that you, I think you said you've traveled to other countries, particularly Guatemala. Is that correct?
Yes, I just got back from there actually a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, this real heart that the Lord has given you. Tell us about that. What have you been able to do when you've traveled outside the United States with this heart for adoption?
Yeah, my travels have taken me back to Guatemala to the orphanage where my sister was adopted from, and I started going back there, I think it was probably about 2002, 2003, something like that. I was in college and just decided that I wanted to see where she had grown up, her home country. And so I started going back to her orphanage. And what was really interesting is that the orphanage that she came from had around 100, 150 kids at the time, anywhere from infants. There were new babies that were brought in while I was there. I got to see the kind of admission process of what happens when a baby is just left on the sidewalk outside the orphanage. But then also there were children up to age like 16, 17 that were still at the orphanage. And when I walked in, I'll never forget, the first time I walked into the orphanage, I was just instantly surrounded by these toddlers. And they all were clamoring for my attention. They all wanted hugs. They were laughing. They were happy. They were so joyful. And it was so easy to get, really pulled in by them. And I wanted to take them all home by the time I left. And then you saw kind of standing off to the side, the older children. And they were a little more weary about why, I'm in their home, a little more reserved, a little more shy, not giving of themselves so much to you, just from the heartache that they had been through. Mm-hmm. And it took a couple days to really warm up to these older kids. And I say older, probably age like 9 and above. And then when they did, the connection that we formed was just incredible. It was so deep and meaningful, like more so, the toddlers were happy with a piece of candy I would give them or just a smile or a joke. But these older kids, they wanted to talk about their dreams, their hopes for the future, their interests, what music they liked, what sports they liked, things that were going on in the United States they wanted to know about in movies. And it was so eye-opening that if you just get to know an older child and kind of get that stigma out of your head that, they are...
There must be something wrong
right, exactly.
with them
yes.
if they haven't
Why
been
are they
adopted.
still here? Why?
Yeah.
It was just an incredible touching experience to really know. And that kind of got my heart on fire for older children and like advocating for them.
You must have spoken their language. Is that correct?
I did. I have learned over the years. I started with very minimal Spanish. But they would try English and I would try Spanish, and we had some dictionaries. That was back before the time of cell phones and translators. So I'm flipping through my Webster's dictionary of Spanish English language, trying to find the appropriate words. But yeah, over the years, I've gotten much more fluent. And so it is much easier to really communicate with them. But still, there's that bond that kind of transcends language even. And
I know I've traveled a lot internationally for Heartbeat International and visited many maternity homes and orphanages actually many are affiliated with Heartbeat International.
Oh, wow.
Particularly in Africa. And, the children, I love the way you describe them, and they want to sing for you and they want to hug you. And, and your heart just goes out to them and not not in sympathy in a sense, but just in love, because they are
love. They
such
want
beautiful
love,
children.
They need love. And it's, I feel like I had so much love to give. And so always growing up, I said, I'm going to adopt someday. I'm going to adopt internationally. I'm going to adopt, these children. And then unfortunately, Guatemala closed their program. And I still go back there. That's where my heart is in Guatemala at this orphanage. And so through the years, even with when adoption was no longer, possible from Guatemala, I've still gone back with my parents, my sister that was adopted from Guatemala. We've all traveled back there. We've celebrated birthdays and baptisms and
wonderful.
All these things down there at the orphanage. And we've watched the children grow. There's no more babies. There's no more toddlers at this orphanage because they've all grown up, and the government is placing them in other homes, things like that. And so,
are there not as many orphans at all in Guatemala?
There are significantly more orphans than what there were because there are no adoptions going on, but there are also more orphanages. And so
this particular one
they're being
focusing
dispersed
on the older children.
Yes. So this orphanage that my sister was adopted from, they have kind of transitioned from orphanage to boarding school to trade school. And now they're helping the older orphans. There's some that are still there that are in their 20s. And the nuns who run the orphanage have helped them to become sustainable adults. They run a carpentry shop. They make furniture.
Wonderful.
They've gone to university over in Russia to do ceramic school. And so they've really, tried to find ways to help these children grow into the life that they have.
And following the Lord's calling and lead with the children that they have who have found their family there at the orphanage.
Yes.
Our guest today is Colleen Holton, who is from St. Paul's in Westerville and the leader there of this wonderful ministry, Elizabeth Ministries, that focuses on all kinds of issues and needs for women miscarriage, infertility, childbearing issues, adoption. And it's just a great one-on-one ministry. And we're talking today, particularly with Colleen, about older child adoption. So I love your story, Colleen, and how God really grew your heart for this. And even though Guatemala has closed their adoptions now, your connection with those children there is just fantastic. So let's focus a little bit on obstacles to older child adoption, not just obstacles that are now there because of the international adoptions being closed. And that's another issue we may get a chance to talk about a little more. Why are all the doors closing on international adoption? But let's talk first about general issues with older child adoption, because we've got many older children in the United States who also have not been adopted.
And I think a lot of times parents are worried that older children have just experienced too much trauma in their lives. And parents are scared to be a parent to a child who has never had a stable home. And, I think it's intimidating enough when your biological child who you've raised since infancy starts the preteen years and teen years.
Right.
Yes, exactly. So you're scared. There's a sense of hesitancy and scared to bring a child into your home who you don't know. Essentially they're a stranger when they come into your home and they're already in this preteen or teenage years.
Right.
But so it's just this, there's a lot of stigma around older children that are in foster care or in orphanages. And it's like, once you can get over that mindset that these children, they need to be loved, they need the support of caring adults in order to make it the rest of their life. And it's not their fault that they are in this situation. There are things that a lot of children have gone back and forth between biological families, foster families. And so by the time they're ready to be adopted, they are considered older child. And it's just, they have so much love to give. And it is so unique when you can connect with an older child who needs a family and you see that they're a person. They're not just a statistic. They're not just a stigma. They are a person. They have interests and personality and hopes and dreams. And so it's fascinating once you get that opportunity. And I think there is an organization out there right now called KidSafe who is working to break down the stigma and the barriers between older child adoption and finding them families. And I was fortunate to get connected with this organization when I was 23, and my parents had read in the newspaper that there was a local family who had adopted an older child from the country of Colombia. Through a hosting program, which is very unique because it gets you the opportunity to connect with an older child without the permanency right from the beginning.
So this is a program that brings children from Colombia to be hosted in American families so they can get to know these children.
Correct. It's not an adoption agency. It's a hosting agency. And the more, I looked into that, I was suddenly interested, older child adoption, older child, bring them a hosting experience. And so I looked into the agency more, and my parents ended up being a host family one summer, and they hosted an 11-year-old girl from Colombia who was in need of an adoptive family. And we spent that summer advocating for her and trying to find an adoptive family, and other families in the Ohio community did the same. And so it's just evolved. This program has evolved, and they do domestic hosting as well in Los Angeles and Washington, D.C., but for people who don't live in those areas, you can do international hosting for children from Colombia. And it's mainly children ages 11 to 14 who, again, fall into this category of overlooked older children who still need families.
So Colombia is still one country that does international adoptions with the United States.
Does.
So if someone's interested in Colombia, this is a wonderful opportunity.
It is, and you can find out more at kidsave.org, and they're actually looking for host families right now for their summer program. They're going to start back up this summer.
Wow. So a family here could host a child from Colombia, even if they're not specifically interested in adoption.
Yes, they're always looking for host families to advocate for children, and just to bring the child to the States opens a whole world of opportunity for them to meet a family that wants to adopt. There's sibling groups as well as single children, and if you're interested in adopting, then certainly they encourage that as well. But it's not a requirement, for sure. But that's actually what took me to Washington, D.C. For my first real world grown up job, you could say, from Ohio, as I moved there to work with KidSave, to get more involved with this organization and to help with the hosting program in the summer.
So they've been around for a long time. Sounds like they've got a good reputation.
They do. And they've been doing the Summer Miracles program is what it's called. They've been doing that since 1999. And since then, they've found adoptive families for over 1,500 orphaned older children.
Isn't that wonderful? Wow, that's a great opportunity. Well, in the United States, I'm just thinking a lot of people who are interested in adopting older children. It's not exactly that kind of a program, but it's foster care to adoption. That's another avenue, isn't it, in the United States?
It is.
You can become a foster parent for an older child and perhaps then decide on adoption. And
it's important when you are considering adoption of an older child is that you take into account, these children, they have their own preferences as to, what kind of a family they've always dreamed about, even as much as, would they like a dog in the family and, little things like that the older children, they do need a different kind of consideration than just bringing a baby into the family who, can't speak, doesn't have preferences, hasn't developed likes, dislikes, that sort of thing. And so it's great. A foster care, you really get to know the child and you decide if it's a fit for both of you. And it's not always just, parents trying to select the child that they want in the home, but it's the child selecting the family that they want to be a part of as well. And so it's a wonderful opportunity, whether it's a hosting program, foster care, to really get to know an older child before making that commitment.
And are there people in your group at St. Paul who have adopted older children that could be matched with someone who's interested, just to talk about it more?
Yes, we have women who have done the foster care to adopt. They've fostered single children, sibling sets, and have gone on to adopt. And we have women that have older children now who are adoptees that could certainly speak about growing up as an adoptee and what that's like as well.
I just think that's such a wonderful resource because for people who, I've heard many people say, well, I've always thought about adopting.
Yes.
But how do they even take the first step?
Right.
Because it's so complicated.
It is. And it's so to be able to talk to someone who has been there, who has gone through that without the pressure of thinking, oh, this is an agency that's just wanting my business, that's just wanting me to come on board. Like it's not that kind of a pressured environment. So you really get the nitty gritty, the good, the bad, what happened, what preferences, things like that.
I'm thinking sometimes it might be an obstacle for people in thinking about foster care to adoption. What if I get really attached to this child and then the adoption doesn't work out? Or what if the child gets really attached to me and it doesn't work and it's not a fit? Are you aware of situations like that? I'm sure it happens, but that probably is not the norm.
Yeah, it's not the norm, but it does happen. And actually, my family, it happened too. So we were in the process of adopting another child from Guatemala, and she was able to come stay with us. She was 10 years old. She needed some medical examinations and things done in the United States that weren't available in Guatemala. And she came here and she stayed with us for a month and just decided she really did not like the United States. She did not like the lifestyle here. She was so used to, what she had grown up in, and it wasn't a fit for her. And so, we were, of course, attached to her. We loved her. We, had known her since she was little. But when you're in that situation, you that love kind of transcends what's best for this child. And, we are in touch with her today. She's grown. She's married. She has children of her own.
Lives in Guatemala?
She actually moved to the States. She married an American man.
Oh, my goodness. God was going to get her here some way.
Exactly. So it does happen. But, even my parents would be a resource to talk to if that's something, you're worried about, like a disrupted adoption or just unsure about what happens there. And, so it happens. It's not often, but it does. And, you just you work through it. Yeah. And to have that support of someone who's been there is really something.
So important. Well, let's give the number again for St. Paul's where people could contact Elizabeth Ministry. It's 614-882-2109. That's St. Paul Parish in Westerville. And this support is available for anyone who may be listening. And If you call that number, they will put you in touch with Colleen Holton. Colleen, I think one of the beautiful things, I can see it in your face. The listeners can't see it, but I can see it in your face, is that peace you have because you really believe you are and know you are being led by the Lord.
Absolutely.
This is something that He put in your heart. And I think that's such an encouragement for people who are listening. If adoption is in your heart, if the Lord is moving you to inquire, to investigate, there's a nudge there. If this is God's plan, He will give you the resources. He will give you the support. He will take you through it, right?
He will give you the peace that you need to make the decisions for your family and to really go forth and follow Him. And, I even in my own life, anytime I'm getting nervous, I'm worrying about something, as soon as I say that prayer, I remember okay, God, this is you. This is all on you. If this is something you want, make it happen. And it's just this peace that fills you. And it's really hard to put into words, but it's like, that you're doing God's work and that this is the path you're on.
Yeah, that is such a beautiful story. I love your story. Thank you so much, Colleen, for sharing it and for the wonderful work of Elizabeth Ministry at St. Paul. You're listening to the Family Sanctuary on St. Gabriel Catholic Radio with Peggy Hartshorn as your host. And we've had a wonderful guest today, Colleen. Thank you again for your beautiful story. And archives of our program are at stgabrielradio.com. We have other programs on Elizabeth Ministry there that you may want to listen to. And we're streaming live on stgabrielradio.com. So the Family Sanctuary is broadcast at 4 o'clock every Saturday and 2 o'clock on Sundays. So please join us again to strengthen our families and make them sanctuaries of life as God intends.
Family Sanctuary is a production of listener-supported St. Gabriel Catholic Radio, AM 820. Archives of Family Sanctuary with Peggy Hartshorn are available at stgabrielradio.com.